Tony D and Little Joan in the background, and this is a screenwriter's take on RRR, Rise, Roar, Revolt, is what it stands for. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing, and welcome to my channel, new subscribers. Many of you out there are new subscribers. Thank you for the many upvotes. When I talked about the trailer, I knew I had to watch this movie. You can check out my books. The links are in the description. I write a series called The Pineys, books 1 through 9 currently, and it's all about South Jersey. It's comedy, horror in South Jersey. So that's my culture coming to you. This is your culture coming to me for all you new subscribers out there. All right, let's get into it. As always, what I like to do is do a non-spoiler review for the general public. It's going to be a little difficult for me because keep in mind I'm coming from the perspective of an American screenwriter. I don't know a tremendous amount about India. I know some. I've read some stuff after watching the movie. So bear with me. I'm sure I'll get stuff wrong. I'm sure of it. Anyhow, but it's all just my opinion. So overall, I think the movie was very entertaining. And there's a lot here. There's a lot here. I'm going to leave that on. That was a cool shot. There's a lot of scenes that are cool. I feel, though, the movie is more of a... It's not really a movie. I mean, it's movie-like, but it's more of a ballad. You know, it's more of an epic sort of nationalistic sort of ballad. I feel like it does have most of the elements of a movie. It kind of doesn't really, as a movie, I think it kind of fails in some respects, but I think it's very entertaining. For me, there's a novelty of checking out movies from other cultures and how they work and how they kind of interact and trying to figure out all the cultural things. So I like it that the movie doesn't cater to any American audiences, really, and it should. I don't think it should. It's an Indian movie. It should be about India. It's very, again, nationalistic, very much steeped in the culture, and that's what I'm interested in. I want to see that and sort of pick through it and learn things. Now, for an American audience, it may not be very appealing because of that, because it's a little too hard. You know, a lot of people, they don't want to do work when they watch a movie, no matter what culture you're in. So it's a little too much, I think, but I think there's a lot here they would enjoy. You know, they might end up zooming through some of this movie. It is over 3 hours long. It's 3 hours and 5 minutes. And I can tell you exactly where it sags. It sags right in the beginning of the first act with the first song. That's where the movie sags. But it doesn't do it for long. And then kind of at the end, but by then the movie's over. So right at the beginning, that first musical number, I think, kind of slows the movie down. It's a little unnecessary. I'll get into that in a non-spoiler review. But beyond that, there's a lot of exciting scenes. And I'm not just saying about the action. There's a lot of drama here. It's not subtle. I'll say that. It's not a subtle movie. I mean, the filmmakers are punching you in the face with their metaphors for the most part. And then there's some metaphors that just went over my head until I read about them. Like there's a metaphor with Indian mythology here with the two characters, two famous warriors who in Indian mythology I read didn't meet, but in this movie they do, and that's part of the interesting fun, like two mythical warriors, although they're kind of metaphors for the mythical warriors, but what if they met at this time to basically save India? And it's an incredibly unrealistic movie. It's definitely the hyper reality I predicted from the trailer, but that's pretty obvious to see. That's what kind of makes it fun. But it also, I think for an American audience, and really any audience, it can take you out of that moment and say, you know, it can be the kind of movie like, oh, I'll watch the rest of this later, because it undermines your investment, your emotional investment of the movie, if you're constantly being reminded that it is a movie, which I think the movie sometimes does that, especially in the beginning. More so in the beginning than towards the end. By the end, they have all these incidents that are stacking up, and then you're kind of more invested. So, big scenes with crazy action, as always. Somebody said in the comments of the trailer analysis, oh, it's not a typical Indian movie. It doesn't have all the tropes. I mean, basically, you hit every trope with this movie for me. The ones I expected anyway. Singing at the end of the credits. I think there were 4 or 5 musical numbers, throughout the movie. I think the movie is a musical. I think the distinction there is it's a musical because without those musical interludes, at some points you wouldn't know what the hell's happening. There's a lot of exposition in the musical interludes. The second one, the dance off, and there is a dance off, that one is incorporated into the plot. But the rest of them, without them, I don't think you'd have the movie. And kind of one of the other ones, but so yeah, there's a lot here. I mean, so you got the dancing, you got the action, you have drama, and it's big drama, like huge drama. Not subtle at all. By the end of the movie, the elements do come together. I think, again, all the weaknesses in that first montage, and I'll get into it in my analysis, which from an American perspective, I think an American audience, would they watch this? I mean, obviously, I think people with connections to South Asia, they'd be all about it, because it would be like me watching a movie about Italy, right? I have some tie to that and to the culture, and I'd be like, well, this sounds like an interesting movie about Italy, and I'm mildly interested in that, and I know things about it. It's the same sort of thing. It would draw probably more South Asian Americans in and Indians than not. But I think, from my perspective, I was interested, again, to see the culture, to see what the hell it's like in India. And I learned a lot, at least about that time period. Now, obviously, India is not India in 1920. But, the fact that you had tigers roaming around, and wolves, and a lot of woods, I think you still do. I think that's a big deal there, if I'm not mistaken. Not as many as probably in 1920, but certainly quite a few. And I also didn't realize how tribal it was. I mean, certainly it's probably less tribal now, but those, it's only 1920. I mean, that's only 100 years ago. And in the span of civilizations, it's not that long a time. I'm sure India has changed much in 100 years, but the interesting things I'll note historically, this movie isn't historic. It's sort of based on history, but it's not historic. So the nationalistic stuff in the end kind of threw me, because 1, I didn't know the people. 2, the imagery seemed to be very socialist or communist, because it was red and it was weird. It was weird to me. I didn't know who any of those people are, and I was waiting for Gandhi. Didn't see Gandhi. But then Gandhi wasn't a revolutionary. Not really. Well, he wasn't a violent revolutionary. So, and 1920 was when his protest started. So I was kind of like waiting to see if Gandhi would be mentioned at the end. That didn't happen. But I could see why he wouldn't be mentioned, because I guess he wasn't famous yet. I mean, it literally had just started. Although it would have been cool to see like one sort of mention of him. Oh, hey, like a young Gandhi, like, oh, hey, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to go try this protest thing. Okay, good luck. That guy's Gandhi. It seems okay. Like that would have been something that would have been done in America, right? It's kind of like when Gilbert Gottfried appeared in A Million Ways to Die in the West as Abe Lincoln. Um, there's probably some comedy in this movie, but it probably went over my head. I did laugh at just the epicness of all the crazy stunts. I did laugh at that because they're just so over the top, so crazy and over the top. So if you're looking to watch this as anything other than just a crazy entertainment and seeing stunts and music, and if you're gonna pick apart the plot, and I will, you will not have a good time. So don't, kind of check your brain at the door in terms of the plot, because the plot is totally insane and unrealistic. All right, and it's more symbolic, I'll say. It's more symbolic than anything. Okay, so that concludes the non-spoiler reviews. So if you're going to go watch this movie, it's currently playing on Netflix. That's where I watched it. It's the Hindi dubbed version. And people told me, well, it's not dubbed. It was subtitled. Subtitled. It is in the language, I don't know this language, but it's called Telugu. I think I'm saying that right. Telugu. Which I assume is one of the many tribes. I didn't realize how incredibly tribal India is. There's a lot of tribes there. It reminds me a little bit of the Middle East, how it's like really tribal. So I think it was in Telugu originally. Telugu originally, and then this one's dubbed in Hindi because that's sort of a bigger audience, and I guess that's sort of for the wide release in India. I guess there's more Hindi speakers. And then, for America, we got the subtitles. Maybe there's a bit of a debate talking in the comments about whether or not it would be good to dub it or subtitle it. I'm of the mind, and parts of it are in English because there's Brits in this, and they are bad people in this movie. So I can kind of see why you wouldn't dub it. Yeah, it's probably best not to dub it, and language plays a role in the plot. So it's probably good you haven't dubbed it. But let's get into it. All right, that concludes the non-spoiler review. Let's get into spoilers. So if you're gonna see it, go see it. I don't think I'm really giving anything away. Well, I am giving away parts because I'm going to talk about exactly what happens, but you could probably see my entire review and then still see the movie and enjoy it, because the surprises are just in watching the visuals. And it's a very, very visual movie. So the first act starts off with setting up the two main characters, and they have multiple names because they have fake names, and because they're both trying to do some shenanigans in colonial India. They have real names, and then I think they have nicknames too, although that's a little hard to discern. There's a lot of nicknames. I think a lot of people are called brother, a lot of people are called uncle in that world. I mean, I could totally relate to that, and in my world, that's something I put in the Pineys. Like, people are called uncle because they're older relatives, and that's like a sign of respect, even though they may not be your biological uncle. Although I think it's Baba. Baba is uncle, and then brother. Everybody's called brother, and that's like, I think that's it's a nice thing to call everybody your brother, and be very sort of inviting. But I think that's also the result of the people being oppressed by the Brits, which is they're harsh on the Brits. So the first act sets up Bahim, and he is like the big strong guy. He's kind of like Indian Tarzan, although he does remind me of an Indian John Belushi. For those of you who don't know who John Belushi is, go back and do some Google searches. I think you'll be very amused. He has that kind of look to him because he's a big, number one, he's a big guy, although, Belushi was fat. He's muscled. I mean, he's pretty muscled. But he's got kind of a Belushi kind of air about him, like a playful air about him, which I really enjoyed in the scenes where he's kind of trying to be funny. Well, he's not really a comedian, but he is funny in a few scenes. Um, and then the other character, let me see if I can find a shot of him here, is Ram. There's Ram. And also very muscular, manly. And so Bahim he's lived with the tribe, one of the tribes in India. And then this guy Ram, he got a job. He was in a tribe, but then he got a job with the Brits, being a police officer. And then throughout the course of the movie, and there's a lot of flashbacks and whatnot, we'll learn more about him. That he's not necessarily a super loyal Brit. He became a superpowered police officer for a reason. But the first act lays out their two characters, and he's fire and the other guy's water. And that, again, ties into Indian mythology. Again, none of this is very subtle. It's not subtle at all. It's like, they even have like little, the movie stops and then puts up these little graphics, like RRR and then R and then the story. And that happens just in the beginning, and then by the end of the movie, it just kind of stops, which I thought was weird. Like, it felt like a bit of an intermission, or you're like watching a play, and then somebody comes out and says, "The next chapter," holding up a sign. It was odd to me, but I mean, it wasn't totally foreign. I was just kind of disappointed they didn't do that throughout the movie, because they seemed to be doing it a lot in the beginning, and then towards the end it was just like, oh, we're not going to do that anymore. And I could have used some towards the end. I kind of could have used some, like, I could have used a sign like the dance or the end. But okay, so you have these two characters in there. They've just got superpowers, right? So you got Bahim, who fights the tiger in the beginning. They're trying to catch wolves in the woods, him and his bros, and they end up fighting a tiger. Now the tiger and all the animals are CGI. They say that at the beginning of the movie. Is the CGI good? It's not bad for the tiger and a snake in one scene. The wolves look pretty awful, I'll say. Yeah, they don't look good. I mean, they're not totally bad, I guess, but yeah, they're a little rough. And even a couple of scenes, the tigers look a little rough too. But, for this kind of movie, I was willing to sort of just overlook that. I thought the tiger looked pretty good in most of it. So the plot, if you can call it that, it's very convoluted and epic, is that he's a cop and Bahim lives in the woods. The Brits, right in the beginning, and this ties in the entire movie, they're terrible people. Like, every British person except for one is god awful. They're super racist, and they're treating the Indian people terribly. Now, I can't blame Indian filmmakers for portraying the Brits that way. I mean, they did run the show, and I'm sure they have many, many complaints and stories. It did seem a little two-dimensional, though, to make I guess he's the governor, the viceroy's wife, she was sadistic. She was like two-dimensionally cruel. I think it would have been better. They gave dimensions to our heroes. I think they needed to give a little dimension to the Brits, I'll say. But that being said, it was more of a musical and a play than it was a movie, I think, because, again, you needed those songs to get to the next chapter. And that, to me, distinguishes musical from a movie with music in it. But, hey, I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed how over-the-top evil the Brits were. I mean, I don't know. I think that might alienate your British audience to some extent, although certain Brits would be relishing the sort of self-flagellation. But yeah, I thought you were a little hard on the Brits. So the Brits, the governor's or the viceroy's wife, decides she wants this little girl as basically her pet, her slave. And so she buys the girl from the tribe. There's a misunderstanding with the language, and they won't give her back. They like beat the mother over the head and take off with the girl, and that's what institutes the whole thing. There's a running line in the movie, which was, and this is a great filmmaker thing, is the viceroy always had this speech about how you don't waste a bullet on an Indian person. Yeah, and that tied into the whole thing, the whole revolt and everything. And he was like, "Oh, you don't waste a bullet. It costs too much money to shoot an Indian person, just like, beat him to death or whatever." Pretty cruel. So the first act is Bahim. He's undercover. He's posing as a Muslim to get at. There's the mom. Let's see if I can find a shot of Bahim somewhere. There's Bahim. He's posing as a Muslim and working in a city trying to find the little girl. This has been over a long period of time. So he's trying to get and find where the little girl's being kept, and he's keeping a low profile. The Brits are terrible. They're abusing the locals. He even takes abuse because he doesn't want to be found out as being this superhero sort of character from the tribe who's going to save the girl. And that's the setup. And then Ram is trying to be the best British colonial ever. So there's a scene where they throw a rock at a police station, and he's one of the cops there. And the commander says, "I want that man arrested." And there's this huge crowd of people. So there's this really cool action scene where Ram has to fight his way through a crowd of literally hundreds of people. He literally fights an entire crowd of people. It gets so bad he gets pinned underneath him and then has to fight his way out. And eventually he fights his way to get the guy. He beats up literally dozens of people and drags the guy back while they're hitting him and punching him and throwing rocks at him. They hit him in the head with a rock. I mean, it's a cool scene. It's a cool scene to watch him fight his way through a crowd of people. Totally unrealistic, but it was cool. And then, so he brings the guy, he captures the guy alive. And because of that, he wants to get a promotion to special officer. But he doesn't get it because he's Indian and they don't give it to them. And, there's racism. Obviously racism. And this is real racism. I'm not saying there's not. This is 1920 and this is colonial Brits running India. Yeah, I'm sure there was tons of racism. But maybe not the cartoony racism you see in the movie, is all I'm saying. So that's the first act. So he's the cop. Bahim is the guy trying to find the little girl. And and then the climax of the second act is this crazy scene where while Ram is trying to find a guy who he believes... First he tries to infiltrate the resistance for the Brits because they offer him like a promotion if they find... they actually figure out that Bahim is coming to get the girl. So they basically offer Ram a promotion if he... they offer it to everybody, but Ram steps up and says, "Oh, I'll find the guy." So if he can find Bahim, or the guy trying to find the little girl, he will be promoted, right? And then while he's undercover, things get screwed up, and he almost captures one of Bahim's associates, and the guy runs away. In the process of running away, he gets to this train bridge, and then there's an accident on the train bridge, and Bahim is living under the bridge. Ram happens to be on top of the bridge. There's this huge explosion. There's a little kid underneath the bridge who's in danger of being killed because the train has exploded. It was full of oil and it catches fire. And so there's this crazy scene where they put out the fire together. well, they don't put out the fire. They save the kid. They save the kid and work together to save the kid, and that instantly makes them friends. All right, so this is basically the end of the first act. That makes them super super good friends, and then they have this ridiculous montage or song. I mean, people in the credits. This is where they run alongside the train. Um, People in the credits said, "Oh no, it's like a montage. You've had montages in movies. Nah, this is more than a montage. It has tons of exposition in the song." I was reading the song lyrics as it was being sung, and yeah, they go from like total strangers to the best friends in the world. Like they're way too best friendsy. Like that's the one weakness I think in the entire movie. Like it just is like too much. Like they needed like I don't know something else where okay they become friends, and maybe they needed to share a couple of other things that made them friends, but they like instantly become friends, and then that friendship is the crux of the whole rest of the plot. So Ram is looking for Bahim, but he doesn't know Bahim is the guy he's looking for. Then they have several scenes of them being super good friends, right? And that's developed okay, but again, like they're two good friends right out the gate. Then Bahim falls in love with one of the English girls. And she also happens to be in the house where they're keeping the little girl that he's trying to get. And he doesn't speak English at all. So, to some extent, Ram translates for him, and then he helps him get the girl. He helps him. And the English girl ends up inviting Bahim to a party, and then that's where you have the dance-off scene. Now, that one was a lot of fun. The dance-off was fun. It's crazy. It's totally insane, but it was fun to see. Like, the Indian guys just beat the British guys. You know, they just outdanced them incredibly. And, which was funny. And look, this is an Indian movie. Obviously, the Indian guys are going to win. It was just funny to see because it just was like this huge epic dance-off. And the British guys are, oh, we can dance better than you. And they show them some, British dances, and then they do, I forget the name of the dance. They had a name for it. I don't want to say it because I'm going to butcher it, but it was a very specific dance, and all the girls swoon. Like the British guys, oh, stop this! This is terribly undignified. And all the British girls, no, this is great, because girls love dancing in every culture. So this endears the British girl to Bahim, and he helps him. He keeps helping him. He's a really good wingman. Ram is a really good wingman for his friend. Really helps him out. That also makes them better friends. But I think, like I said, just that one song in the beginning, and it's all about their friendship and how they instantly become great friends. I think they could have slow rolled that a little more. I mean, the movie's 3 hours. The stuff that happens after would have made them more bonded friends anyway. But anyhow, again, I'm nitpicking. But that scene was fun, and I'm not a dance guy. I wouldn't go see more of that. But for one time, I just thought it was hilarious that they had this crazy dance, and they just totally beat the Brits. So of course, then we are leading up to the big revelation. Yeah, this was part of the montage. The big revelation what will happen when Ram realizes that Bahim's the guy he's looking for. So that eventually happens, and it happens when Bahim comes up with this crazy plan to rescue the little girl in the, I don't know what it is. I guess the Viceroy compound that they keep showing in the beginning of this thing. It probably has more significance to people who live in India, but this is like the house where the government is, where the British government resides. So Bahim has an actual plan to break in there, and here's his crazy plan. So they have a set of giant double doors, and the first one will open, and then what happens is the second set of doors will only open after the first set closes. right? So they get a truck, and he gets a guy. He goes, "Okay, your job is to listen for the second set of doors to open," and then they just drive the truck through the first door, which just explodes, and then the second door is already open. So they just keep going, and then there's like a million British soldiers in this place. So as soon as they do that, I'm thinking like, what the hell do they have in this truck? Well, the truck like skids sideways and it opens up, and then it's Beheem and like a bunch of tigers, and I guess a deer with giant antlers, all CGI, of course. The deer didn't look great either. The wolves, were there any other animals? Mainly the tigers, but so so he jumps out and he's got all the animals and he can't even control them. So he like has a torch and he drives them all into the Brits, and then it's like chaos. It's just absolute chaos as the tigers are ripping apart British soldiers and the wolves are attacking people, and they're also attacking Beheem in the middle of the fight while he's attacking British. These guys all have guns. And so it's just absolute chaos, and like Beheem's fighting his way through the soldiers, and he's super close to getting the girl because he needs this key to get through a door. And of course, Ram shows up in his uniform because he, by this time, has realized who he is. So he realizes, oh, I got to capture him. So they get into a big fight, and it's Ram versus Beheem, and it's this huge betrayal. And basically, Ram forces him to surrender because otherwise they're going to kill the girl. So he has to surrender. It was the whole point of him coming there. He can't let the girl get killed. So basically, he surrenders. And it's a crazy scene. I mean, it goes on for a good 5 minutes, at least. Crazy scene. And so it's this big betrayal. But then Ram gets promoted to special officer, and he gets access to guns. And then in flashback, we learn when Ram was a kid, his father led an uprising. It failed because they didn't have any guns. His father was the only guy with guns. And then we reinforced the line, about bullets not being wasted on an Indian person by the viceroy, who at that time, I guess, is a captain or whatever. So it ties into everything. It's a good flashback. Man, so much happens in this movie. So then they have a scene where Beheem is being tortured horribly and being flogged live, and then the governor's or viceroy's wife, there's not enough blood for her, and she's brought her own cat of nine tails with like a whip with like spikes all over it, and she like throws it. Hey, use this. Like she's all ready to go with more sadistic stuff. So they whip him with that, and then he won't kneel. Like all he has to do is kneel, and then it's over. But he won't kneel, and he keeps not kneeling. Then there's a riot, and he goes. I think he goes back to prison at that point. But they're going to execute Beheem. But during that time, you learn more about Ram. His whole point of being a special officer was to get access to the guns, because he promised his dad he'd give a gun to every person. Very libertarian, but I think it turns politically towards the end. So the whole point of his being a police officer and being like the best one ever was to get access to the guns so he could hand them out to the people and overthrow the Brits. That's basically at the heart of what Ram's all about. But he learns, just as he gets the promotion he needs and just as he gets access to a big shipment of guns, they realize, oh no, they're going to hang Beheem. And he has to save his friend. He can't betray his friend, because they are actually friends, even though he's betrayed him. So he comes up with this crazy scheme, again, crazy action scene, to save Beheem and the girl. So during the hanging, he launches this crazy scheme to fight everybody all at once. Like, it's literally like one or two guys against an entire army, but they always, win. And so he frees Beheem and the girl. They escape, but in the end, he gets injured and the Brits capture him. So then it's reversal, right? He goes to prison. They don't get the guns, and Bahim, they're looking all over India for him, and they trap him in this one province. And then Bahim meets up, and really at this point we're at the third act. We're at the top of the third act. Things look their worst, right? Bahim is being hunted, and the girl's being hunted too. The Brits are this close to finding him, and they run into Ram's fiance. I don't know if they have a picture of her. They run into Ram's fiance, who helps her. Here's that crazy tree scene. This is a crazy scene. They run into Ram's fiance, who helps them, and at that point, Bahim realizes the terrible mistake he's made. His friend did betray him, but he had a reason to betray him because he was going to get these weapons to start a revolution. And the line is something like weird, like, oh, I'm a stupid tribal. I was only concerned about Gond, which I think is his tribe. I wasn't concerned about the land, meaning like I think the whole country. So he has this journey too. He has this revelation that, oh no, I got to think big too. I got to think about revolution. So he launches a plan to save Ram, and then comes the craziest action scene ever, because Ram's been beaten up inside the prison, but he's also been exercising too, and they're going to shoot him or hang him in a couple of days. The viceroy comes in, beats him up one last time, puts him in solitary, and Bahim breaks him out, puts him on his shoulders, and they escape, and Ram's on his shoulders the entire freaking scene. So again, another crazy action scene where they're shooting guys and beating up guys, but like, you know, it's like two guys on top of one. So it's nuts. It's absolutely insane. So they escape, of course. And then it's all about this idea that they go into the woods, and basically Ram comes to the conclusion that Bahim was right. Like it's all about, it's not really about the weapons so much as it's about the, I don't know, fire in your heart kind of thing. So the next scene is them fighting off an entire army together. So when Bahim saves them, they're coming into the woods to get him. He uses his tribal skills to heal him, and then the entire British army in the area comes to kill him. And then there's this another crazy action scene in the woods, with the woods being lit on fire. So it's literally two guys against an entire wave of British soldiers. And of course they win. Not only do they win, they then go, okay, now we have to go and attack the Viceroy's place from the beginning, which they do. And in an incredibly, again, unrealistic scene, what they do is they launch a motorcycle. Bahim launches a motorcycle. Ram uses a fire arrow to set it on fire. The motorcycle, of course, goes right through a window into a big room full of explosives and all the ammo that the Brits have stored up there, and then the place goes up like the Hindenburg Hotel in Quantum of Solace. And like the whole place explodes, and they kill everybody, and including the wife dies finally, which I was glad to see. You're caught up in the movie. It's like, yeah, kill her. She was awful. And then the Viceroy, yeah, kill him. He was awful too. So they kill him, and then it's like, oh, we get the guns. Now we're gonna. Yeah, the line was, I'm gonna give a gun to everything. And then the line about the bullet comes back. You know, when they kill the Viceroy, because they don't kill him right away. Like his wife dies, and then he's about to get a gun, and then they're like, this is all about, bullets. So then they launch the revolt. And the end is Ram brings a truckload of guns to the revolutionaries. Bahim saves the girl. He gets the girl. He gets the English girl. He doesn't speak any English. So that's going to be an interesting pairing. And then Ram goes back to his fiance, who he promised he would return to and bring the guns. He goes back to his tribe, and everybody's victorious, happy ending all around. And then the final musical number, which I totally expected in an Indian movie, which is kind of a trope, but whatever. So they have this big dance scene, including one of the characters who was already dead, which is typical, because it's just the cast. It's not the characters having the dance thing, it's the cast. So you have this big thing, and it's very nationalistic. And in the background, I can't show it to you because I'd have to show you this still from the Netflix. And at the time I did that, I got super flagged on YouTube. But it looked, the guy, I don't think it's Stalin, but he looked like Stalin. I think it's supposed to be somebody else, but they have like this red mark on their head, which I think is not the dot, but like a line. And I think that's indicative of the rebel cause. Not sure. Again, I'm not that up on my Indian politics. I've read a little, but I didn't have time to do a deep dive. And then they keep showing all these nationalistic figures, but they showed them in a way that looks very sort of socialist or communist. So I was a little confused by that ending. Maybe somebody in the comments could straighten me out, like, what's the deal there? I didn't recognize anybody, of course, because I don't know Indian politics. But they seem to be figures from, I assume, the time period that overthrew the British, colonies and pushed for freedom, which they eventually got. Now, I assume it's all more complicated than that. It's obviously just a movie meant to entertain. I hardly can't blame the Indians for making a movie like this, making the Brits look like the bad guys. Why wouldn't they? I mean, they weren't exactly nice. They were exploiting the people there. But, there are a lot of grays. I mean, but I don't want to get into that. But the movie is very entertaining. But there's a lot to it. And definitely the fat could be trimmed. If you wanted to make this for an American audience, I would say cut out most of the music. I would keep the dance number on, the British, when they outdanced the Brits. That was part of the plot. So I would keep that. I would also keep the song that Bahim is, when he's being flogged towards the end of it, he sings a song which appeals to the people, and that's how they end up rioting, and then that's like an important moment. The rest of the songs were kind of like exposition we didn't need, I think. The CGI was a bit of an issue. The song at the end, I totally didn't need. Sorry. I mean, I didn't really understand it. I read it as much as I could. I get it. That's like a cultural thing. It happens at the end of a lot of Indian movies. Probably not all of them, but a lot of them, right? That's what I assume. It wasn't awful. It's just like, it's not my kind of music. And I appreciate the genuineness of the cast and the filmmakers. No one here is phoning it in. No one here is phoning it in. These people are giving 110% in every scene. I would say, again, the movie's not subtle at all in its messaging. I would wind that back a bit. I would make it a little more subtle than what it was. I mean, you can't make it too subtle when you have these crazy action scenes. There's really no reason to make it too subtle, but I would have wound it back a little bit. That's just me. I think it was a little too heavy-handed in parts. But overall, I enjoyed it. I wanted to see what was going to happen next, mainly because I couldn't believe how crazy some of the action scenes were. The action carried me along because that's what I like. I like action scenes. I like to see crazy stunts. And they were crazy. I mean, I think the craziest bits are with cars, believe it or not. When a car hits something or blows up, it just like whoosh, and then rolls, crushing many people on the way. So I said earlier in my summation to the trailer, I didn't know if there was a lot of CGI in this. Oh, there's a ton of CGI in this now. Now I know there's a ton of it. they do have tons of people, to use as extras. There they are there. But I'm sure there's also a ton of CGI too. I mean, there's a wider shot of this scene where you just see off in the distance hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people really surrounding this police station in kind of a deserty area. Um, so that was definitely part of that's definitely it's CGI enhanced definitely, and the same thing with the cars. When the cars go flipping in a few of the scenes, that's probably CGI because they just really like. And the action is different because there's a scene where they like clock the mother on the head with a piece of wood, and that's like clearly a breakaway prop, but it looks vicious. Like it looks vicious. I think in an American cinema, you probably wouldn't get that vicious of a hit, or they wouldn't show it. They would cut away to make it less vicious. But I think they were going for that. It's the sensibilities, I think, of the Indian filmmakers. That's why the action's so crazy. The sensibilities are, oh yeah, let's ramp this up to 11. So I had a lot of fun watching it. I think you would have fun watching it, but you got to understand what it is. It's not a typical American action movie. It's different sensibilities, and you have to go into it with you have to be open to the sensibilities and understand that there's a lot of melodrama in it. It's fine. I mean, it's not a realistic movie. It's not even as realistic, I would say, as Fast and Furious. And Fast and Furious is pretty unrealistic movie. It's definitely Indian superheroes coming at you in sort of a ballad / musical / nationalistic thing. So there's just going to be parts of it that are just going to go whoop, right past you. But, I mean, I can see why this movie's popular. I could certainly see why this movie's popular. There's a lot here. And again, I'm not a music guy. I'm not huge on the music, but I like some of it. I mean, I definitely love the dance-off. I thought that was fun. Even though I wouldn't say, I wouldn't go out and get the soundtrack. But I thought the dance-off was fun just to see the Brits, like, lose it horribly. And this action scene with bow and arrow. I mean, look, the action scenes are ridiculously sided to these guys because they're superpowers. There's no explanation of why they're good other than, again, it's about the mythology in India. They're supposed to be legendary. They're kind of supposed to be these legendary mythological warriors, which is, I think, a heavy part of the culture. So if you're from India, you'll be like, oh yeah, I know who that is. Right, that's supposed to be, that's supposed to be that guy, and it's almost like, how can I explain it? It's a shared experience, which is key in any movie. It's a shared experience in another culture. So it would be like, I guess it would sort of be like if you took a modern version of, say, like Americans aren't as religious anymore. So it would sort of be like if you took, a modern version of Billy the Kid and Jesse James, right? And you basically implied like this is the reincarnation of Billy the Kid. This is the reincarnation of Jesse James, and they're going to fight for the little guy in this, against an oppressive dystopian modern day government, let's say, or maybe something like, if you put them in another setting, I don't know, like not totally modern day, because this takes place in 1920, don't forget. But something like that. You would have to take heroes that that you're aware of that were, or even like you could say it's more like Superman and Spider-Man teaming up, or probably like that superpowered, maybe like Spider-Man and Batman teaming up, kind of the opposites, but then becoming friends and brothers, and there's a lot of use of that term, brother. They're not really brothers. It gets a little confusing because at some points I thought, are they really brothers? Although that would have been an easier way to explain it. Maybe they could have been actual biological brothers reunited. One left the tribe early, but um, that would have been a way to explain, their quick bonding. I think it just needed that part of it. For me, was the weakest part. That montage of them just suddenly being friends. I'm like, what the hell? They save a kid from a train accident and then they're friends. It's weird. It was weird to me. Like, I can understand them being friends, but then they become besties. I mean, like besties. The montage is like them smiling. You have to see it. So it's on Netflix. I would recommend it, especially if you've never seen one of these movies before. I think you would find it fun. You might end up zooming through parts of it. I wouldn't blame you. I almost did, but I felt like obligated to watch the entire thing because I am going to review it and pick it apart. From a screenwriting perspective, it's very luxurious. I mean, there's a lot of luxurious scenes in here. I think you could easily cut this down to 2 hours. It would be a lot tighter. It would be probably mostly action. But I was having fun, I would say, through a good 80% of the movie. There's only the 20% is that song in the beginning and then the song at the end where I was like, eh. Everything else I was good on. So, from a screenwriting perspective, you're going to write something like this, understand it'll probably never be produced. Only in America could you write something this epic. It's just so expensive to shoot. I mean, look at this scene. The woods are on fire. Now, some of that's probably CGI, if not all of it. Still, though, CGI ain't cheap. It costs money. It's still, there were a million extras still. Even though some of the extras were probably CGI and reused again and again and again, there were a lot of them. There were a lot of stunts. Stunts are expensive. There's a lot of scenes with slow-mo with the stunts. That's gonna cost you more. There are a lot of locations. A ton of locations. Some of them are outside. There's ton. Look, is some of this CGI? Sure, a lot of it's probably CGI, but this was one of the scenes where they bond. They climb this tower, which again is a very Indian thing. I think this holiday, whatever it is, I don't know the holiday, so I was just like, oh, that's cool. I guess that's a thing. You have stunts on horseback, stunts on vehicles, tons and tons of gunplay, tons and tons of fighting. So this is a very, very pricey movie to make. Even if you're like here, that you probably got all the guys up front. Maybe like everybody on this wall is CGI, but and then everybody past like the first line of guys, they're probably all CGI behind them. But that's still a lot of guys, But again, India has a lot of guys. There were tons of locations, though. I think that's the advantage of shooting in a foreign country. Well, to me, it's foreign. For some of you out there, it's your home country. I think the advantage is you guys don't have, you can do locations cheaper than we can in America. Some locations in America are just insanely expensive to shoot at. So there's a lot here to enjoy. But again, it just, the costumes changed. There was a million costume changes. Producing the music costs money. That costs money. Everything costs money. So if you're going to write one of these, understand, good luck getting it produced. Because at minimum, it's going to cost you, I can't see something like this costing less than $50 million. Has to be. And that might be in money in India, where again, it's cheaper to shoot things. But still, this is it has to be a big budget movie. Has to be. Even by American standards, this is probably a decent sized budget. By American standards, this would be easily a $200 million movie. Easily. Um, so it's called RRR. See if I remember the R's now. Which again, I don't really understand the title. I mean, I understand the English title more so than I understand RRR. Is that a thing in India? RRR? Do people say that? Rise, roar, revolt. Yeah, and then again, I don't understand the iconography. Icon, I can never say it. Iconography at the end. There's none of it in the trailer, so I can't show it to you. At the end with the various, I guess, historical figures at the end of the movie, who were probably important to an independent India. It seemed to be presented in a very, very socialist, communist way, because it had like a red tint, and then it was like, the sun's coming down, the lighting's coming down on them, and that's very. It looked like a poster for the Soviet Union. It was weird. I don't understand that at all. Maybe somebody can explain that part of it to me in the credits. Are they very communist in India? I don't think so. I don't think they're that communist. I assume you've got your socialists like we do, but so should you see this movie? Yeah, see it. Just understand what it is, Just understand it's epic. It took me 2 days to watch the movie. I had to stop and go to bed because it was getting late. And speaking of getting late, I should wrap this up. So that's it for me. Tony D, RRR. It's currently playing on Netflix in Hindi, subtitled. I hope you enjoyed the breakdown. If you're going to do the screenwriters, good luck. And we'll see you in the next one.